Welcome to the Lifestyle Challenges of the Arkansas State Butterfly, brought to you by the Northwest Arkansas Master Naturalist Sanction Group of the Diana Project. My name is Shawn Hunter. I am not an ologist of any kind. I do belong to and have been certified as an Arkansas Master Naturalist of the Northwest Arkansas chapter. I belong to the Ozark Wild Ones and the Ozark Society Sugar Creek chapter. My friend Curtis Leister and I co-founded the Diana Project. It was Curtis's big question of what is the Arkansas State Butterfly that led us on the research journey that ended up at the Diana Project. So along that journey, I learned some history of the Diana. In 1700s, it was first described, and at that time, very common in much of the central and eastern United States. By the 1900s, it was still visible and identified as the most magnificent and splendid of its species. It has since seen a steady decline, and in 2007, thanks to some very aware butterfly watchers, it was requested to be made the state butterfly of Arkansas, and that designation happened in 2007. In 2015, Arkansas Game and Fish Commission produced this wildlife action plan. In this publication, it listed 377 species of greatest need and their conservation status. That included mammals, reptiles, insects, and birds. In this publication, it also gave reasons for the decline, and most importantly, they gave recommended next steps for each species. In this publication, the Arkansas state butterfly was listed as a moderate to high risk of being extirpated or lost to Arkansas. So within that plan, the recommended next steps were more data needed for this species, continued attention to this species, uninterrupted nectar for this species, and defragment the habitat. So in response to those next steps, the Diana Project was created. And our goal is to utilize conservation education and citizen science to minimize the challenges to Arkansas state butterfly. And we do this by teaching people to become citizen scientists, creating awareness about why you should look for the butterfly and where and how to find it. We also give information about the specific native plants that they require for their survival. Overall, we teach people to create, protect, and connect habitat, not just for the Diana. It turns out that the Diana Project is a great umbrella project that teaches pollinator awareness and helps all of Arkansas's pollinators. This is your state butterfly, the Diana Fritillary, also known as the Diana. On your left is the blue and black female, and on the right is the brown and orange male. And I'll show you some size comparisons here in a little bit and explain a little bit more about why they're so starkly different. They are named after the Roman goddess Diana, who was considered the goddess of hunting and forests, which is appropriate because these two spend a lot of time at the forest edge. The term fritillary refers to the checkered patterns, the checkerboard pattern. You can see here the 222 on the top side of the front wings. So the Diana fritillary, the binomial name being Argynnis diana. Argynnis refers to the small black markings with silvery spots on the lateral side of the hind wings. Some common misconceptions were also discovered in our research to find out what is happening to the state butterfly. A lot of misconceptions were found. The first and main one was that they're only found at Mount Magazine in Arkansas. This is not true. It is historically found statewide, and I'll show you some maps later. They are still predominant in much of central Arkansas. Central mid-Arkansas, I should clarify. They are a forest butterfly. Well, that's not entirely true either. They are a forest edge and open area butterfly. They can feed on any flower. Can't we just plant pretty flowers and feed all the butterflies? No, that's not true. They are specialists, which means they require certain nectars. And I'll cover that again here in a few slides. And so they can fly. They could go pretty much anywhere they want. That is not true. These butterflies, according to studies, resist crossing open spaces such as highways and parking lots, sometimes ponds. Another misconception for their larval host plant of violets. There's plenty of violets. I pull them out of my yard all the time. Well, that may be true, but where there are violets, if they're not being pulled as weeds, the pesticides or herbicides are applied at the wrong times, or very bad times usually. And we'll learn a little bit more about that life cycle timing as we go along. They overwinter as adults. Don't the monarchs fly south for the winter and vacation in Mexico? Yes, but the Diana does not. It spends the entire first winter of its life as a 1 millimeter long instar or caterpillar in leaf litter near violets. If you don't know what a millimeter looks like, it's about as wide as your pinky nail most of the time. So this species also belongs to the family Nymphalidae, same as the monarch. This Nymphalidae means brush or four-footed, and it refers to the shape of their two front legs. This image is not an Nymphalidae, but it does show this. It's a good image to show all six legs of a butterfly. As you may remember from grade school biology, an insect has to have six legs. So here you see the front, middle, and hind legs of the Asian common Mormon. I'll minimize that and enlarge the male Diana. So this is a close-up of the male Diana, and you can see, besides that it looks like it has five legs, that first appendage there is actually the proboscis, which, quick butterfly fact, it is not a straw-like appendage. They don't suck with it as we originally learned. It's more of a soaking up mechanism. So the other four appendages are the four legs, and you can see here with this pink arrow, it is pointing to the front leg, the front right leg. So the two front legs are pulled up against the thorax, and they're very seldom used. And that's why they're called four-footed or brush. They're called brush-footed because some of the front legs have a little brush-like appendage on the ends, and they can actually use that to clean their proboscis. Just a side note, if anyone ever videotapes a butterfly cleaning its proboscis with its front legs, I would love to see that. So again, back to the stark difference between the male and female. This is called sexual dimorphism, or having two forms for each one of each sex. So it refers to behaviors and appearance that can differ between the sexes. As with all things pollinators, it is part of the reproductive repertoire. So for the Diana, you can see the first major difference is the color. Well, this is considered extreme because they just don't even look like the same species. The male is about 4 inches wide, and the female is slightly larger at about 4.5 inches wide. Also, some life cycle differences. The males emerge about 2 weeks sooner than the females and also die off sooner. I think that's the major differences. We may cover a few more differences as we go. So their cousin in the family Nymphalidae is the monarch, and you can see here this dot on the lower hind wing of the male identifies this butterfly as a male. Quick side note, it used to be considered a scent gland by all monarch people, and now there's some studies saying maybe it is not a scent gland. So I just put a question mark there because I don't know. Ask your monarch people. So the main difference between the monarchs is that the males have the scent gland and the females have slightly thicker veins. So they're a little bit harder to tell the difference, but they are slightly dimorphic. So the Diana's unique challenges. Just a summary real quick, and then we'll go into each of these points here as we go. Awareness is a problem for the Diana. No one is really looking for the Diana because they don't know that, one, it's threatened, and two, it's very difficult to identify being sexually dimorphic, extremely as it is. The second major challenge is habitat. The food for the adults and the larval. It is a specialist as an adult, and it has one host plant for the larva or the caterpillar, which is the common as a, excuse me, all species of violets, as far as we know. That is one thing that needs to be studied. It's safe to say the common violet for sure. They require shelter all year, in either the leaf litter over winter or the forest edge during the summer when it's hot. And so all of these things lend to its fragmented habitat. A big thing about fragmented habitat that I'd like to point out is that if a population is isolated because it can't get from, say, central Arkansas to northwest Arkansas, that isolated population will eventually become vulnerable to disease and other environmental challenges because their DNA becomes so similar that if one butterfly gets a bacteria, it's able to spread through that whole population very quickly because the DNA is similar. So, a little bit more about the challenge of awareness. This slide shows the most common lookalikes for the female Diana, which is your lower left image. The most commonly mistaken one is the middle image, the red spotted purple. Um, Although the female Diana in this picture is relaxed, her wings will come up and look a lot more like the red spotted purple. So just some major differences on the top view or dorsal view of the butterfly. These are all blue and black butterflies. You'll see the swallowtails all have the little swallowtail hanging down, the drip, I call it. But if a bird gets that or they wear it off in mating, it can look very similar to the other butterflies. So the big change, or excuse me, the big difference between the red spotted purple, which you can't always see the red spots in the sunlight, is the extreme dark line that is almost triangular shaped or chevron on the bottom wings. And you'll compare that to the Diana, which has the we'll say polka dots on the bottom wing and a more rounded shape. Those are the really two big differences for me. And if that doesn't work for your identification, um, you look at the ventral side or the underneath of the butterfly, and you can see that if it has an orange spot on it, it's not a Diana. The Diana is very bland, except for those silver and black spots that we saw in the first couple of slides. And also, if you've ever seen a Diana, you will note that they are about twice the size of the red spotted purple. It's a very noticeable butterfly. When you see it, you will know. So here is a size comparison, about 4.5 inches for the female Diana in the upper left corner. The upper right corner is the red spotted purple, and the lower right corner is a very abused male Diana. He just looks slap wore out. Okay, so the male lookalikes. Bottom right-hand corner is probably a newly eclosed male. He's not quite as worn out looking. And then the top above that is, of course, the underside of the male Diana Fritillary. And the two on the left, the variegated and great spangled, are the most commonly mistaken butterflies for the male Diana. The great spangled especially, this image has very good lighting. In certain lights, the center part of that, actually both of these butterflies can be very dark and confusing. So always look at the underneath patterns for the main differences. The great spangled has these great white pearl colored spots. And then the variegated just has a whole lot more going on in that hind wing. So those are the major differences on the male common lookalikes. So on to challenge number 2 of habitat. If you're anywhere in Arkansas, you probably recognize this picture. And that is man-made loss of habitat is just one of the challenges for the Diana. But their excuse me, their habitat is declining due to man-made problems, and it is also fragmented for many reasons. Again, that statement from Professor Baltasar, who is adamant that the Diana does not readily cross large expanses of unsuitable habitat. Unsuitable meaning no nectar and no place to hide, or too open and not enough shade when it's hot. It can mean many different things. Um, so the habitat also lack of food and shelter, not just fragmented, and then the lack of adult and larval plants. And habitat, where do we need it most? One of the things that the Diana Project encourages is people to join the iNaturalist software. It can either be a mobile device or your desktop. But on iNaturalist, you can upload photos if you see a Diana preferably if you see anything that's alive, you you can post it. All wildlife are welcome on iNaturalist and helps with the global diversity data collection that helps scientists make decisions without having to spend an entire life in the field. They can collect data and process it so much faster if we add to that. So become a community scientist or citizen scientist, as we used to call it. You do so on inaturalist.org. And it's as simple as looking for things, taking the pictures, uploading them to iNaturalist. And as I said, this can be done on a mobile device in the field. You can just take pictures at your leisure and spend all winter uploading them. It doesn't have to be an immediate thing. And so when and where are we looking for the Diana? From May to October is their adult flight season, which is the easiest way to find them. And all over the Ozarks and the Ouachitas, and if you visit the Appalachians, that's the second main population. And they're nowhere else in the world but those three places. So look for this symbol for to make sure you're on the right app. And look for iNaturalist.org. There's a lot of just help files and videos on how to get started. I encourage you to go and check that out. So this image is from, excuse me, the monarch is, what is that? Is that a female or male? That would be a female. This map is actually, I'm not going to swear that's a monarch. Let me negate that. Somebody email me and let me know if that's a viceroy or a monarch. Anyways, this map itself is an image that a screenshot from iNaturalist, and this shows all of the sightings in the world for the monarch. And as you can see, um, they are very much a global butterfly species. We talk a lot in the United States about their big migration route from Canada to Mexico, but as you can see, they're not really limited to that magical route. Um, Actually, I've learned recently from a monarch expert friend of mine that some butterflies never leave the West Coast and some of them never go farther than Florida. So that is still a lot of study going on. My point with this map is that they have a lot of room on this planet that they utilize. On the other hand, the Diana is only found in these two places in the United States, in the Ozark, Ouachita, or Appalachia ranges. Below that, this is just a close-up of that same map, and you can see here, these two major populations actually used to be connected thousands of years ago. And they are very similar species. I believe the Appalachia population has evolved to have slightly different wing lengths, probably due to the altitude and environment there. So you can see in Arkansas we have much in central, a little bit in lower, and we're getting more northerly reports. We don't know if that's because they're actually migrating that way or because more people are looking, but it's encouraging because Missouri doesn't actually have a known population. Just quick note that the Branson, Joplin, Wichita, and Manhattan observations are in question. I believe the Branson one is at the Butterfly House, so that one doesn't count either. So the status throughout that entire range, they are considered to be vulnerable in 5 states. That would be the yellow ones. They're imperiled, which is slightly worse in the orange states, and that includes Arkansas. They are completely gone from the rest of their historic range, and that would be Kansas, Missouri, Louisiana, Mississippi, and I believe Pennsylvania, and maybe over there a little bit more. So you can see that it's not just Arkansas that they're in trouble. They are in trouble in all of their range. So a little bit closer to home, this is that same map zoomed up on Arkansas. So you can kind of pinpoint if you live in there, if they're been sighted anywhere near you. And I would encourage you, anywhere that you don't see an orange dot on that left map, I would encourage you to go out and start looking because we would love to have more people observing and reporting to iNaturalist. So on the right hand, this image is from this purple and blue image of Arkansas is from the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission report in 2015. And this shows the potential habitat. It's either suitable or optimal, depending on the color shown. But this is the historic locations of the Diana Fritillary. So you can see, compare that right side to the left side, and you can see that they're really missing or not being reported in those rest of those areas, which is the majority of Arkansas. So get out there and look for us. So what is their preferred habitat? A tree line plus violets where they can lay their eggs and rear their young. An open area with large nectar that they prefer. And that nectar needs to be continuously there and available, meaning you have to plant for succession for something to be blooming from May to October. And as you can see, on the left is the adult habitat, some shade for when it's hot so they can hide, and some tall nectar that they prefer for food. They are a large butterfly and they live from May to October as one adult, so they need a lot of nectar for that entire time. And then again, on the right side is the leaves, preferably near a violet patch, where the young can overwinter. If you are curious, that is a common blue violet in the bottom right-hand corner. And I believe that's the fourth stage instar or caterpillar right before it encloses into the chrysalis. So a little bit more about that adult nectar. They are a large butterfly. They do have a long flight season, again, from May to October. They prefer native plants. And for safety's sake, we recommend local ecotypes, meaning it was grown or the seeds were collected within a certain range. I believe it's 50 miles. That's really hard to do. So limit cultivars, nativars, and exotics. Plant as many native plants as you can. And in order to make sure that you're doing that, choose it by the scientific name. Excuse me. For instance, a common blue violet, the scientific name would be uh, Viola sororia, excuse me. And sometimes you'll see that scientific name, and then underneath it, there'll be a little quotation mark with a pretty name, such as uh, Blue Fabulous. That makes that a cultivar or a nativar. It shouldn't have quotations and a common name underneath it. Uh, that's when in doubt, you can always check the Atlas of Vascular Plants of Arkansas online or reach out to the Native Plant Society and double check. The Diana is a specialist. And what that means is they occupy specific environmental niches, such as that shady forest edge next to an open area full of nectar. They do have difficulty adapting to change. As we can see from the maps, they don't have a lot of migrations uh, corridors, excuse me, that connect their habitat. And they do have specific requirements for survival. We've looked at that a little bit with the habitat. And they usually eat only one or two types of food. So the adults prefer specific nectar plants, and we know that about the Diana. The larvae or the caterpillars need violets. And as far as we know, any native viola is allowable. We know for sure the common blue is a safe bet. Um, if anybody would like to jump in and run a study on the violets and their preference, that would be amazing. So we do have a plant list for the adult preferred nectar. It also lists the violets in Arkansas, the violet species in Arkansas, on our website. So, why do they prefer a certain nectar? If you're not familiar with the proboscis, it has specific parts that each butterfly uses to collect their nectar or their food. The knee bend, the length of the distal section, and the tip are all very specific to the plants that they evolved to use. And they, I think I have a slide here. Let's just move on to that one. So here, on the left, letter A shows the knee bend is very dramatic, and the this sorry, the distal section is a little bit shorter. So this butterfly or this pollinator kind of looks like a skipper, is a nectar feeder, and you can see the bottom image is the tip of the proboscis, and those are the appendages that absorb the nectar from the plant. And if that knee bend is in the wrong place, or the distal section is too short or too long, it can't reach the nectar in the bottom of that bloom. Again, that middle section, the middle one, letter B, is a pollen feeder, and you can see that its proboscis has different collectors or hairs so the pollen can attach to it. And then on the far right is a non-flower feeding. So its tip of its proboscis is more of an absorbent thing. A curious thing about butterflies, especially when they're puddling, they can actually sort of slobber into their proboscis and rehydrate the surface that they're collecting from or absorbing from. And this appendage is sort of made to do that. And as you can see, it doesn't have a noticeable knee bend because it doesn't need to bend to get into a flower shape. So anyways, that is just a little bit about why certain pollinators need certain flowers. They're evolved and their body parts are shaped for certain things. Another thing that makes their selection of of nectar choices important is their vision. They do have compound eyes, kind of like a fly. Everybody's seen the funny glasses that make you look like that make you allow you to see like a fly, with millions and millions of pictures or fragmented images. They do have excellent perception of color and motion, but they see in the ultraviolet range, which we do not. And I'll show you a couple of slides about what that looks like to them. So they're not good at judging distance patterns, and they don't see in one continuous picture. All of this being said, pollinator vision is reliant on native plant signatures. And this is what I'm talking about. There's a common dandelion, which is not a native plant. I know it's introduced. But this on the left is an ultraviolet photograph. So this would be closer to what a pollinator might see. They're not going to see that yellow flower. So when we cultivate hybrids of plants by either growing them and encouraging them to have more scent or shorter stalks or more leaves or more petals. We can, not always, but we can change the signature. So it might look like the same dandelion to you and I, but to the bee, it might not be recognizable at all. Here's another ultraviolet vision on the right versus our vision on the left. And you can see we would never look for those blue dots, but the pollinator would be looking for those blue dots as a symbol or signal that this is food to them. I think we have one more. Yes. So another thing about their vision, the ultraviolet vision, they see themselves and other insects differently. You can see this wasp here. I want to say wasp. I won't swear to that. On the left is recognizable to us. On the right, it is a completely different color, even, and its patterns are a lot more noticeable. So they use their ultraviolet vision for mating as well and finding their mates. So let's look a little bit at the life cycle. They eclose in the summer. The males eclose in early May. This year, 2025, it was May 15th at noon on the dot that the first sighting was reported to, or close to noon, on iNaturalist. And then the females will come out a few weeks later. During the summer, from June to August-ish, sometimes as late as October, they'll be mating, preferably near woodland edges, near the violets. in open areas with preferred nectar. Again, they're huge butterflies, and it takes a lot of work. They need as much nectar as they can find. Regarding that nectar, according to Professor Baltasar, these are the top favored, um, observed favorite plants of the Diana Fritillary. The good news is there's a butterfly weed, and everybody has a butterfly milkweed. So that's good. Some of these other plants are a little less common. You may note the dreaded thistles. There's two of them are common favorites of the Diana, and I want to vouch for especially that top left soft thistle, the Carolinium. It is amazingly beautiful. It's a butterfly magnet, and its leaves are quite non-abrasive. You'd be surprised at how soft they actually are. I didn't post the link, but if you want to search or if you can email me, I will send you a link later on. The Xerces, that's Xerces Society, which are the world preeminent experts on pollinators, I believe, or at least commonly understood to be. They have several articles about the importance of bringing our thistles back. Apparently, when the United States started receiving I think it was the sow thistle or Canadian thistle, they called it. It's actually a Russian thistle that came to us through Canada. Anyways, it sort of took over our pastures because the seeds, I believe, were in our hay seeds. And at some point, the government said, you can't have thistle, you can't have this thistle in your pastures or you'll be in trouble. So farmers and people went out and herbicided all of the thistles because they didn't want to get in trouble. They didn't want their cows getting sick. They didn't want their hay fields ruined. But no one said, hey, this is the bad thistle. But these thistles are native and they're good and necessary, so please don't spray them. So, anyways, that being said, across the United States, we lost much of our native thistles, and many of our native thistles are going extinct. Um, and they are very critical to many pollinators and other wildlife. So, anyways, I would encourage you to Google the Xerces Society and thistle documentations and read up on that, and maybe incorporate one or two, even of the abrasive ones in your pastures or in your backyards, if you don't mind them being there. Save the planet one thistle at a time. That's my motto. Okay, so along with that, this is those same 8 plants, and I just wanted to show some people are spreadsheet people, some people are visual. So we know that they're beautiful plants, especially the bergamots. They're very unique. And who doesn't love a purple coneflower? But in this presentation here, you can see some important things. The height, there in the first column. So you have Latin name, common name, and then height. You can see that they're all fairly tall plants. The shortest one being the butterfly weed and the slender mountain mint. Excuse me, and the horse mint. But the rest of them are over 3 feet tall, and that's important as a large butterfly. Imagine if you were a giant condor and you were in the bottom of a valley and you needed to get to the top. It's going to take everything you've got to get enough lift to start flying. Um, and that's the same if you had that condor on a cliff. As we know, they just leap off and fly. And there's a reason that they like high points because it doesn't take so much effort for them to take off. And it's the same with these large butterflies. The taller the flower, the more likely they'll be able to escape predators and not waste so much energy just taking off. Oops, I'm sorry. Let me back that up a little bit. You can also see here, we talked about having the necessity of blooms from May to October. And you can see here, if you planted one of these 8 top primary plants, you would have blooms from April to October. And what it doesn't show you is the violets, which start blooming usually in February, March. I believe that's it. Okay, so by late summer, the males begin to die off. Oh, so sad. And the females enter what's called estivation. It's not quite hibernation, but estivation, because butterflies are cold-blooded. Um, they have no means really for regulating their body temperatures other than either opening their wings to absorb warmth or flapping to eliminate some heat from their body, which doesn't really work very well because all of the action is at the wing attachment to the body. So for to cool off, they really need to be in the shade. And a lot of the times I'm learning butterflies are usually kind of high up in trees. So if you're out looking, don't don't just look at the flowers. So come fall, they will be ovipositing or laying eggs near violets. And the curious part about the Diana is that they actually walk around the forest floor near violets. And lay up to 1,200 eggs on leaves, twigs, and sometimes, as you see here, on pine needles. Um, there is a high mortality rate of these 1,200 because they stay here for I think we have a time limit on that how long they are eggs. But all of these eggs are laid around on leaf litter, so they can be turkey food, small mammal food, m- um, other bird foods. So they are quite vulnerable as eggs on the violets because they're not hiding, excuse me, on the leaves because they're not hiding under a leaf higher up like most butterfly eggs on trees or plants. So they oviposit in September-ish, October, and they will incubate as eggs and be vulnerable to as turkey food for up to 5 weeks. And then once it hatches and it eats its egg, of course, that's the only nutrient it gets, and then it will sort of hibernate in the leaves over winter, which is typically about 5 weeks, without eating or drinking anything until the violets begin to emerge in late winter, early spring. So it emerges in early spring to eat the native violets. Um, and I can't answer the question. I've seen them eating the leaves. I don't know if they actually eat the blossoms. So the instar shown here, this is a larger image of the one we saw earlier. You can see it is black and orange, and it looks like several other fritillaries. And maybe even I believe the pipevine swallowtail also is the similar color. Um, but the Diana has these strange triangular shaped horns, and that's unique to it. Excuse me. Moving on. So the instar emerges late winter, early spring. It has to have violets. If there are no violets nearby, or if there are violets covered in herbicide, they will die. Tell your neighbors, those are not broad-leaved weeds. And just for the record, violets do make an excellent green mulch. There is a school in Arkansas in Hot Springs, the National Park College. The biology professor there has organized a study with some of her students, and they are testing and providing data that hopefully will prove that violets make a better mulch than do bark or rubber. So we do have 15 native violets in Arkansas. And there are 20 species of wildlife in Arkansas that rely on the violets. So the Dianas are not the only ones that need them. At the bottom here, you'll see the cream violet on the left and the common blue on the right. We have one of Curtis's presentation favorite things to do was to sing or to recite roses are red and violets are white, yellow, blue, purple. Anyways, you can look on that list and see there's several different varieties and several different colors. Thank you, Curtis. So violas, again, there are many species that rely on the violas, and actually all fritillaries rely on the viola as a host plant. And there is one fritillary in Arkansas that escapes me that can use a different plant. but can also use a violet. But for the most part, all the other fritillaries rely on the violet as a larval host plant. You may or may not know that this year the regal fritillary in Arkansas is listed as endangered, and that's shown here on the left. Again, those violets are listed on our website. So that once it gets as big as it can get as a caterpillar, it will roll itself in a leaf. And there is some discrepancy in where they will put the leaf or where they will make their chrysalis. Some people claim they will do it in a tree. I have not found the research to be conclusive. I have a picture of a chrysalis here in a leaf, so that's what I'm going to tell you they do. Again, I don't know if I covered it at the beginning of this, but all of the information I'm providing here today with this slideshow, all of this information comes from research that I've found. Again, I'm not an ologist. I trusted people who are smarter than me and resourced all of my information from places that are dependable and scholarly. And so the best I can give you is what I've found. So they pupate in leaf cover or near violets for 30 days as this little scat-like chrysalis. This is one of the huge differences I'd like to point out between the monarch, which has that beautiful uh, emerald green and gold specked chrysalis that people like to wear as earrings. So this is another kind of a marketing challenge for the Diana. Nobody's going to hang that scat on their ear on purpose. So create habitat. Um, Everybody worries about the leaves. Everybody worries about their neighbors or their HOA or their husband likes to mow or their partner likes to mow. And I just wanted to encourage you to save the leaves. All you have to do is find a creative place to put them. They don't have to be all over the yard. The tree that drops the leaf, of course, usually benefits from the decomposition of those leaves in their crown area. That's what they're for, is to provide nutrients back to the earth. So that's the best place for them. You don't have to build a border. I typically use a leaf blower and just keep mine blowed up around a circle around the tree that they came from. It looks nice. It looks like it's on purpose, and I haven't had too much trouble with my neighbors. So you can do that. That's creating a nice winter habitat, not just for Diana's, but for all beneficiary, um, be- all pollinators, all insects that benefit us. There are many, many, many things that live in the leaves. Um, then to create habitat as far as the adult butterfly, it's as simple as putting a few of those native plants in a pot and put them on your balcony or your front porch or in your front yard. Um, one plant is enough nectar to get an adult butterfly to the next plant, hopefully, assuming your neighbor has one as well. So the more stopovers that we can build, like a monarch way station, the more things that we can have in place that have native plants, preferably, the more likely we can keep these species going um, until we as humanity find a better solution as a whole. So connecting that habitat, your pot can connect to the local library that can connect to the local farm, and hopefully get more places that those all of our Arkansas pollinators can get from one point to another to increase their chances of survival. And keep their DNA, their genetics strong. You can see in the little map that I have down below, there's a one butterfly sighting in Leola and one all the way over on the west side of Murfreesboro, but there's none in between. Of course, that could be, we know scientifically that that just maybe nobody's looking right there. But if those two are isolated, they either won't mate, or they won't be able to get back to the other population to feed and breed. So the connection, even a potted plant, is better than no plant. So protect that habitat. Remember, there's tiny little insects in your leaves. Don't spray them. And it's so easy. It's so much easier. You don't have to spend all Sunday bagging and raking. You don't have to breathe smoke from burning them, which is actually really bad for you. I did that one year and actually had poison ivy amongst my leaves and ended up in the hospital from it. So burning leaves is just not a good idea. And of course, pesticide herbicides are expensive. So why use them? Just put your leaves in a spot away from your house that you don't have to worry about them and leave them be. Please and thank you. So, as Curtis says, what is the state butterfly of Arkansas? We'd like to encourage everybody to take this information, watch it as many times as you like, learn it by heart, and ask everyone you know, what's the state butterfly of Arkansas? Tell them everything you've learned. And if you can't remember it, just send them to the website. That's it. And thank you, Curtis, for that great question. And thanks to our supporters. We are a sanctioned project of the Northwest Arkansas Master Naturalists. But we also cooperate with many of these entities for plant research, pollinator knowledge. And remember, you can find and create and protect habitat. Learn to love the violets and teach your neighbors about it. Plant native nectar from May to October, something that blooms from May to October. And we've made it easy. I've given you 8 plants that will keep you will keep you blooming from May to October, and you're gonna love them. They will attract so many butterflies. Leave your leaves and leave them clean. And join us on the journey. Share your awareness on your social media of choice. You can go straight to our website and find any of those links. And I appreciate you listening. If you have any questions, my email is the one that you will find on the dianaproject.org, and it will come straight to me. And I would love to hear from you. Any thoughts, questions, or comments about the video to help us make it better would also be appreciated. And happy looking.